Okay, I know Paul's with us. He's tending to his daughter. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. I want to welcome a new person here. She's right in the center of my screen right now. Oren, thanks for coming. You guys, you're free to unmute your mics just if we're meditating or something like that, or if there's some background noise, turn them on. I want this to be easy for people to communicate. So Oren, I just met here in Tiru. She went back home to Israel a week ago. Yeah, a week ago already. So I'm happy that she joins us. We had some really long, wonderful conversations over chai and also sitting alongside a few lakes around the region here. So she's very cool. She's very serious about the non-dual teachings. So I think she'll be a good addition to the group, however long she can stay. So welcome. Nice to see you again. Okay, I want to do a little housekeeping first. This group is supposed to start at 9 o'clock in Vietnam time. And it seems like most people are joining about 30 minutes late. Now, I know sometimes there are some really good reasons, like Paul has a 5-year-old daughter, and we all know that 5-year-olds pretty much control your life. So he had to take care of her in a morning of illness. So I understand that sometimes we have to be late, and that's cool. If it's something that you know ahead of schedule, let me know. That's wonderful. Otherwise, let's try to either let's change it, make it a half hour later, or let's try to be on time. I don't want to start if I know people are coming, but also I don't want to make the people who are here wait and lose their time. So let me know if you want to keep it at the same time. Let's see if we can make a commitment to show up on time. And if enough people seem to have trouble with that time, let's bump it back a half hour. I have no problem with that. But I'd like your participation to let me know, not just be silent about it. Sorry, Paul?
Sorry, I lost you for about 10 seconds there, but you seem to be back now.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just asking if people would rather start a half hour later, I can do that. But if they want to start at 9 o'clock Vietnam time, then let's start at 9 o'clock, unless something special happens. Otherwise, people just sit around and they wait for those who are going to be late. If this was a big group, I would just go and let those people miss out. But it's a small, very intimate group, so I want to wait for everybody. But it's not a great idea to make other people who are here on time have to wait. So please give me a comment. You don't have to answer me right now, but just write a comment in the group so I know how to schedule it. All right, we can live with that. Either way, I can live with it, but let's pick one. Okay. I had something come up at here in Tiru last week that I wanted to share this morning. It's one of the most fundamental points. You know, I keep going back to the beginning because until we really get the beginning, the rest of it is just intellectual stimulation, and that's not what I'm here for. And you can hear the fundamentals 100 different ways, and it still points to the same thing. So I really want to encourage people to just go through this. When I start at the beginning, there's a good reason for it. Even for those who I know who have been here week after week after month after month. So you all can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. The fundamental principle behind non-dualism is one consciousness. If I had to sum it up into 2 words, it would be one consciousness. Did everybody see the post earlier in the week about this Sunday? I had 2 posts that I made. One of them was all the people sitting on that's a very famous photograph back in New York City, back in the 1920s, I think it was, when they were creating New York City. And I don't have it in front of me, but I think I said the most basic problem of people waking up, becoming aware of their true self, is that we're all sitting on our butts. One person said, could you tell me what butt is? Because I capitalized it, but I also just put 1 T on it. And we all know the difference between B-U-T and B-U-T-T. But for this one, I intentionally misspelled it. Because our problem isn't that we're sitting on our butts, our behinds. The problem is we're sitting on our B-U-T, which is our language of yes, but. And yes, but is the biggest obstacle to our personal growth. Because the minute that we say but, what we're doing is we're rejecting what we just heard. It might be subtle, it might be very vocal and strong. The word but is a word to break a train of thought and counter it with a previous belief or thought. In fact, we have another word that proves the point, and that other word is and. And is I hear you, and doesn't mean I agree, but and means I'm open to a continuation. Right? I heard you, but is a limitation. It's a shutdown. It's like, okay, my mind is going back to its own attitudes, beliefs, opinions. And in the very beginning of starting these meetings, in fact, way back when I was doing live sessions in Saigon, I always started them off by saying, nobody has to believe that what I say is true. In fact, literally, none of it is true because I'm using language which is of the dualistic nature to try and explain the non-dual. It doesn't work, but we do the best we can with what we have. And is very open-minded, but is closed-minded. No matter, we might try to tell ourselves that it's not. Our language reveals, our language that we're so familiar with that we say it automatically reveals a lot about our thinking. It's not the big statements, it's not the fancy thoughts that reveal it. It's the ones that we just, it's like they say, nobody knows that you're watching them, so they behave in their natural state. Language does the same thing. It's not wrong. I don't want to say that you're wrong for saying but. I just want to bring it to everybody's awareness. So in those first meetings, and it's been a long time since I've said it, so I want to say it again. Nobody has to buy into what I'm saying. Nobody has to take it for a truth. What I want is that everybody's open-minded while we're here during this meeting. In a day, in a week, in a month, you can always come back and tell me I'm full of shit, and I'm perfectly okay with that. It's not about me personally. It's about letting it sink in without our defense mechanisms based on our prior belief systems. Because some of it is very challenging, which is the point. In non-dual teachings, the point is that we have to doubt, we have to look at every belief system we have and not say it's not real, but say, is it real? Is it possible that there's something else that I haven't looked at or I haven't been willing to look at? So I love discussion and I love debate. And if somebody wants to have a debate about something, I'm happy to do that. It's enjoyable, and it does get us someplace. But if we drag it out, then it also takes away from other people who aren't involved in that conversation. So if there's a question, I'll try to address it sufficiently in 10 minutes, maybe 15 if we have to. That way more people have a chance to talk. And the first thing that I want to stress is give it a chance. This isn't the place to debate it yet. Be open-minded, say, okay, let me become aware of my beliefs, my attitudes, my opinions, what I hold to be true, and see if I can put that aside for just a little while and look at another possibility, just a possibility. It's a really key point to our growth. Growth happens because we let go of what limits us. A belief system may be a very good belief system, but it is a limitation of what's possible. So let's look at it from that standpoint and say, while we're in this meeting, I keep an open mind. If I hear something that pulls up something in me that says, but, I hold the thought, but, and I just say, okay, let me hear it through. Let me sleep on it. Let me meditate on it. Let me contemplate it for however long. And then I can choose to incorporate it into my belief system, to throw it away if it doesn't fit, or to throw my old belief system away if in a new light I see that it really, maybe it came from somebody else that I was taught, comes from society, comes from family, comes from religion, comes from politics, whatever it is. Right? Basically, all our beliefs are given to us. We polish them, we color them with our own paint set. Who was it? Einstein said, most people never have an original thought in their lives. I have maybe one a year, and it makes a good living for me. Even a great mind like that was acknowledging, when he says thoughts, he also was including beliefs and opinions. He's a scientist. He's trained to be willing to invalidate his own beliefs. We all should be like that. So let's try us to keep that framework of a mindset as we go forward. And you can message me and maybe we can talk privately if you want, or maybe if it's something that a lot of people talk about, well, we can have a special session. That's okay with me, but not here. Everybody can agree with that? Okay. I know I spent 30 years on my butt, so I know the challenges. I had my teacher, wow, he was very strong about sharing that. And yeah, I got it. It worked. So I'm taking the gentle approach. Did you see the post I made about the 4 lights? How many lights are there? How many lights do you see? Did everybody see it?
I didn't see that one though.
Okay, here, let me pull it up because it's what I want to talk about a little bit. I'm going to share a screen for a minute. See if I got it here. Okay, that was the original post. You all see this?
Yep.
Okay. So the question in the promo for today was, how many lights do you see? And I'll ask you guys that, and you can just popcorn it. You know what popcorn means. You don't have to raise you just say, 4, 7, 10, whatever it is. How many
4.
lights do you guys see? Okay, I hear 4. Anybody have a different vision? In fact, I left this just clear enough. You can see it's a motorcycle with headlights 4 times. So it's very reasonable to say, well, I see 4 lights, right? But I want to change. Okay. Now, how many lights do you see?
I don't see any. I see 4 white circles.
Okay. All right. Well, let's say white circles are, I'm getting rid of the glass over the light, but it's the same thing. So a light circle, a white circle, we're going to qualify as a light. So answer is 4. Sorry, Paul, I couldn't hear you.
I said there are 4 of them.
Okay. Everybody agree? Okay, now I want you to look at something different. These are, I put this all on one slide here. That's why they're small in the big screen. Okay, now how many lights do you see? Anybody? How many lights do you see?
I see a white stripe along the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
We can call it a light if you like.
Yeah, it's white, right? So we'll say white light. Everything, right? If we look at a piece of paper, and this is part of the conversation, we don't see a piece of paper, we see light. Right? We see light reflecting off the paper. And in that case, it's white paper means it's a substance that reflects white light. So it's a screen, but it's light. You with me on that?
Yep.
So here we acknowledge we see 1 light, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So why do we say I see 4 lights? Now, Paul was right. He said he saw 4 white circles. But we looked at it and said, without the awareness of this, we say, I see 4 lights. So what I see on the top line is I see 4 motorcycle lights. Now I should have picked different motorcycles, but I was lazy, so I apologize for that. But the point is that we're so convinced that today there are seven faces, 7 people in this meeting. 7 people in this meeting looks like this. You see my arrow? I don't like to use a lot of graphics. This is a unique situation. I couldn't explain it better without this. So I see Oren, I see Yum, I see Paul, I see Mai, right? Plus a few others. They look, I'm going to talk about the people in this group right now. They all look different. They all move on their own power. They all have what appear to be their own thoughts. Their voices sound different. Even their vibrations feel different to an extent. So I say there are 4, or in this case, there are 7 human beings here. 7 beings being human. But if we look below the surface, and this is the point of non-dualism, is the reality is this. The reality is there is something called consciousness. And the theory of non-dualism is one consciousness. One consciousness looks like this, the bottom white bar. But in the world, it shows up as this. There are objects that appear to be real and appear to be independent, separate selves. But their source, all objects are light. Everything is light if we go deeper into that. It's energy and it's light. If we look beyond in this case, the 4 motorbikes, what we see is if you know the word substratum, the foundation of what we see on the top is one light, what we see on the bottom. But it appears in 4 different objects, or it appears in 7 different people that we're talking about right now. You could call that white light love, consciousness. If you have a religious idea, it can be God or Brahman. They're all trying to define the same thing. And that's the substratum, which here we call consciousness or awareness. This is the most fundamental part of non-dualism, and I tried to make it visual to see if it's a little better. You know, this is as the world appears. This is, we're learning something about what the world isn't, that the appearances aren't what they appear to be. And then the bottom is the awareness that what is the basis, what is the essence of the world? And the essence is light. Or what we're using light to describe is consciousness. So just as we see the white substratum here showing up through 4 headlights, there's one consciousness, and it's showing up as individual consciousnesses, but its power, its source is the one consciousness. And then when it comes through my headlight, I color it on my thoughts and feelings and beliefs and my memories and my experiences. You color it your way. But we're just laying color over the white light, or we're just layering perceptions over consciousness. But it's consciousness that makes those perceptions possible in the first place. So by that very fact, that's a really important comment, is perceptions are powered by consciousness. That's how consciousness appears in the world. We perceive and then we project. Are you with me on this? Does it make sense? I want to get rid of this and go back to normal. Okay. That's the fundamental of non-dualism, is at the basis, at the foundation, at the substratum, the essence. If we peel away all appearances, no matter how real they are, what's left is consciousness. Just as in your dream. When you dream you being chased by a tiger down the streets of New York City, right? There's you, there's a lion or a tiger, and there's New York City with infinite number of objects. They all, in the dream, to the dreamed you, look real. In fact, you run for your life in your dream, and that even spills over. Sometimes it's so tense that you wake up from your dream, having lost your breath. You need to get yourself together. The dream seems so real. Yet we know, we're all sane people here, quote unquote sane, that it was just a dream that appeared real to the dreamed me or the dreamed you. By the way, I'm on a short battery, so my camera will go on and off. You don't lose me. It just takes me a minute to turn it back on. And I'm going to, I think I'm burning out here. It's too bright. Better? Yes. The difficulty for a lot of people, for most people, at least in the beginning, is in believing that you and I are not different, that we're not independent beings, that we're not independent consciousnesses. In fact, we hold on dearly to the idea that this is my own consciousness. This is because this is me. My consciousness, my body, my mind is how I identify me. It's a fundamental misperception, but a fundamental principle of the appearing dualistic world of objects and forms. It's very hard to let go of it. But if we take the idea that consciousness is universal, it's unlimited, eternal, no one in the history of humankind has ever experienced anything outside of consciousness. So can we prove it scientifically? No, but we can very easily disprove it. Can I prove it's infinite and eternal? I can't prove it with measuring devices of the dualistic world. I remember Tom once said, I don't need to know that this stuff is scientifically correct. I need to know if it makes my life work better. That's enough verification for me. If my life changes and I become more peaceful, more happy, more loving, more kind, more forgiving, that's a pretty good non-scientific, but real experiential validation of the principle. But it's really easy to tear it down. I won't say disprove, but punch holes in it all over the place. Because nobody's ever located an individual consciousness. Nobody's been able to put it on a scanner, do an MRI, do a CAT scan, do an X-ray. We've never found it. And it's a principle that materialists have had for at least some centuries without any proof. It's called an assumption. But it's only an assumption. And it's a funny assumption because the brightest minds in the world use the weakest assumption to claim that they understand life. They understand how it works incredibly well, but they don't know anything about what it is. What it is the realm of philosophy, spirit, and spirituality, not religion. I want to make that clear distinction. How it works is for sure given to science. Spirituality and philosophy do a pretty poor job of that. But likewise, science does a pretty poor job of telling us what it is. Quantum physics proved that point and started blowing it all to pieces. Einstein, well, Niels Bohr, I suppose, Einstein, they started punching holes. They were open-minded. They said, wait a minute, what we believe for so long, there are too many holes in it. Maybe it's not a valid theory anymore or a valid law. Let's look deeper. And the deeper we look, the less we know now. We used to be impressed that we knew what a molecule was. Before that, we were impressed we knew what an atom was. Now we're down to gluons and quarks and string theories and pure potentiality and singularity. And we're not done yet because there's no end to taking apart physical objects. The cool part for me is that it seems like science and philosophy / spirituality are starting to come back together. I think that's an encouraging sign that we're both saying, in your domain, I grant you your expertise, your knowledge. Likewise, good in my domain. Open your mind. Our experience is of a world of objects. And science has done an incredible job of measuring and defining those objects. But they've done nothing about what makes all those objects possible. We can say, they used to say matter, right? Now we know that that's not really true. There really isn't anything called matter. It's energy that's slowed down in its vibrations. So then they said it's all energy. But energy is also of the dualistic world. What's behind energy? What is more singular, more undifferentiated than energy? It's consciousness. All energy appears in consciousness. As far as we know yet, but considering that as long as an advanced species called human beings have understood science and have been figuring out the world, they've never touched this. They've never found any evidence that there can be anything outside of consciousness. You would need consciousness to find that. Therefore, it would be self-defeating. So non-dualism goes on the principle, the theory, that at the most fundamental level of the universe, of the cosmos, is consciousness. How would we know the cosmos without consciousness? And if we start using other words, consciousness, love, compassion, truth, beauty, God, if you want, those are pretty hard to divide, even in our modern everyday lives. There's love. I have love for you. I have love for a wife, a child. We say, my love is different for my child than for my neighbor. But I would suggest that you just have a limitation on love. It's more limited with your neighbor than with your child. You have a vested interest in your child, much greater than your neighbor. But even if it's limited, does the feeling when you look at your child or your brother or your sister or your mother or your father, with that, when you're in that moment of just loving them without any judgment, without any anger, without any history, without any memories, does it really feel like a different love than in the moment where my neighbor just lost the most important person in their lives, and you're relating with them, and you're just sitting with them, and you're giving yourself to that person in that moment? Does that love feel like it's a different love, or just maybe a limited love? My experience is when I'm not being the ego gi with all of my stuff, all of my baggage, the love that I share in the moment with any one of you, and the love that I share with my sister, whether it's my blood sister or my sister of like the one I have in Vietnam, it's the same love. I just limit it in different cases. It's more fragile, right? If my child upsets me, I don't blow up the way I do if just a coworker at the office upsets me. I get emotional, right? I have reactions to it, but it doesn't go away. What goes away is in fact, it doesn't go away with the person at the office that you get pissed off at. What happens is we put a veil over that love. It's called anger. It's called failed expectations. The love doesn't change. Our seeing changes. Our thinking changes. Our opinions change. We have this thing called judgment. We have these things called expectations. They don't destroy love. Just like sunglasses don't destroy light, they just limit how much of it gets through to your eye. I would challenge anybody to tell me that the love that you have for your neighbor is a different kind of love than the love you have for your child or your parents. It's the same love. One has less limitations than the other. It has less opinion attached to it. I remember Barb, who most of you know in the group, who has 2 children in their 30s and 40s. And I said, do you ever hate your children? And she said, never. I said, would you have liked to hate them? And she said, many times. No matter how badly they respected her, how badly they treated her, anybody else did that, they would be out of her life so fast. But her kids, she can't do that to. It's because she's taken the sunglasses off when she's dealing with her kids, with a coworker, with a neighbor, with a person on the motorbike. We put the sunglasses on and we judge them. And in the judgment or the failed expectations, they didn't behave the way I expect them to behave, then I dim the love, but I don't change it. Therefore, I think it's fair to assume that there is only love. not many loves. You don't have love. Love isn't created from you, nor I. It flows through us. And our own minds are the sunglasses that change the looks of it, that limit it. But I've never seen anybody prove that love is generated from my brain, from the organ called the heart, my lungs, my toes. It's oddly enough just like consciousness. In fact, we even talk the same way. We say true love is unconditional, unlimited, it's infinite, it's eternal. Those are all the same words we describe consciousness or awareness with. So it's not a stretch to say consciousness is love and love is consciousness. They're the same thing. We're talking about them differently as a convenience to our daily lives. But in essence, they're the same thing. So is it a stretch? Is it an impossibility to say there's only one consciousness? And it shows up just like the light on that motorcycle. That light doesn't emanate from the headlight. It actually comes from the battery. The electrical current touches the light bulb inside the light and it glows. Now the question is, where does the battery get light? Science has showed extremely well how a battery works and how electricity works and how a light bulb works, but they've never touched the subject of how does that light end up in a battery, wire, and a light bulb? We know how it works, but where did it come from? It's energy. How did that energy come to the battery? We can define that, we can show that, but how did the energy become? This is a really simple example of the process of negation, which is also at the foundation of non-dualism, is we take our beliefs, right? This is a phone. And then it says, is that all it is? Do I say, I have found the truth, this is a phone? Practical purposes, forget it's a camera also, right? Practical purposes, yeah, it's a phone, that's a truth. But is it the whole truth? Absolutely not. We know it's metal, it's plastic, it's glass, it's a computer chip, right? It's lots of things if we start to take it apart. Now let's take all of those parts apart. And soon we get down to the phone is nothing but atoms. And we say, okay, it's atoms. So 100 years ago, that would have been the end of it, right? And then we say, is that all it is? Well, no, now we know it's protons and neutrons and electrons, and that's not all it is. It's now gluons and quarks and strings, and is that it? It's not even that now. Quantum physics is saying, well, it's like this soup of potentiality. It doesn't have, it's neither and all of those things until it's observed, and then it takes a specific form in a specific place. What's the soup? Soon they're going to say, what's behind that singularity, that soup of possibilities? That's what we're doing in non-dualism to talk about you and I. Me, who I perceive myself to be. If I do that negation first with a human being, I start with my thoughts. Am I my thoughts? Am I my memories? Am I my feelings? My thoughts, I know they've been influenced by countless people. I formed my thoughts based on thoughts of other people. Is it really an original thought? At least I would say 99% of them are not even my thoughts. They're composites of other people's thoughts. And I've painted them my color. And then I say it's my thought. So I negate, am I my thoughts? I can't really claim that those thoughts are mine. I can claim that they show up in me, that this body expresses them. But did they originate with this body? I can't take credit for that. You can take credit for it, but if I ask you to prove it, you can't prove it. My memories, we know, science is, the court of law takes a very dim view of memory now. We used to think, wow, the memory was golden. Now we know our memories are highly inaccurate, but they're more inaccurate than we realize. And I'm not my memories. I'm not my feelings. I'm not this body. This body is made up of all kinds of elements. It's made up of atoms. It's made up of everything of the universe vis-a-vis by the earth. The earth put it all together to give the nutrients, the elements for me to be sitting here right now talking to you. I owe my existence to the earth. Is that the end of it? Nope. Because the earth owes its existence to the universe. Is that the end of the story? No. The universe owes its existence to the Big Bang, if we go along with the theory of the Big Bang, which right now, it seems to be the general consensus that it's the most reasonable theory that there is out there. Is that all there is? Ooh, I don't know. I don't have any measuring devices that can measure something that the Big Bang is made up of. We have a theory that it was, the size of an atom. Right? So let's go back to that atom that was the beginning of the Big Bang. Is that it? I don't know. I don't have any tools that can measure beyond that. What was before that? I can't go there with my instruments. My instruments are all designed for duality. They can't go to answer that question that philosophers and spiritual people have been talking about and teaching for centuries. Because the richest philosophy comes from the mind and the heart. In fact, if you go really far back, they called the heart the center of what we call the mind and the heart. It takes a mystic to understand that heart. Science can't touch it. Does that mean we don't believe in it? It's a choice. But it doesn't make any sense that it stops at the quark, that the universe, that the Big Bang stops at the first quark, gluon, whatever is the smallest form right now that we're capable of measuring. Where did it come from? Where does it owe? It's everything in the universe from the first nuon to you and me sitting here owe our origination on something. And that something is not something we can measure. Maybe someday we'll have a tool to measure it, but then the question will be, where did that come from? It's an endless path of going backwards, of negation. And just like in quantum physics, they keep discovering that there's something they don't know. Scientists are convinced that they'll get there someday. But they were convinced so many times along the way. I don't know why anybody gives them credibility when they say, we'll figure it out someday. I wouldn't give them my money if we were talking about that. Not a chance. They've let me down so many times. But I'll pay them a lot of money for telling us how it works once that first object is here. I grant them their domain. For you and I, who am I? It's the same story. I can negate it. I can break it. Am I Guy? I'm not Guy. That's a label that was given to me. Am I an American? Another label. Am I a man? Another label. Am I human? Another label. Labels define, they simplify our lives. They're worthy. They have a purpose. For practical purposes, we still admit that we live in a dualistic world, and there's my body that appears before you, and there's Jung's body that appears before you, and we better not try to share the same space and time. There's a problem with that. Materiality requires space and time. Two objects can't occupy the same place in space and time. But consciousness can. Because in consciousness, there is no space and time. Because it's unlimited, it's infinite. In fact, infinity is, let me take it back. Infinity, place, space, is the defining label that we put on infinity to be able to understand and talk about it and deal with the practical world where space and time exist. Eternity. What we call time is a limited label placed upon eternity so we can talk about it and understand how to live our practical lives. But even it wasn't that long ago that we had two separate things we called space and time. Now physicists say that was wrong. We call it space-time. It's one word. Space-time is one word for eternity, infinity as one word, which still is an inaccurate label, because what really is just one is consciousness itself. Our problem is it can't be measured, therefore it can't be explained. It just is. But none of us deny that there's not such a thing as consciousness. We only argue that it's my consciousness and your consciousness. Yet there's a very weak basis for that argument. There is room for a really good argument called the objects of consciousness. Oren sees the world differently right now than I do. Where I'm sitting, I can't see what she sees. Same with same with Paul. So we say, oh no, this is my consciousness. That's your consciousness. Because if we share notes, what is appearing as real is different. Some similarity, but mostly it's different. So I say, no, you have your consciousness, I have my consciousness. But what we've done is we've misunderstood, we've mistaken the objects of consciousness for consciousness. That's why we have a problem with it. When I talk about there's only one consciousness, I'm talking about the consciousness that all objects appear in. See, if I got on a plane and went to Israel and sat next to Oren, I would see much more what she sees. Still not exact, right? Because we wouldn't be in the same space-time. quite, but my consciousness would look a lot more similar to hers. It's only because my body has moved, right? Along with it, my mind. But it's still, if she and I sat there and really compared notes, there would be some differences. Is it that we have different consciousnesses, but they look more similar? Or is it that no matter how close or how far I am, in this case from Oren, there's just consciousness, but it appears through my eyes and it appears through her eyes, just like that light appears through different motorcycles. The motorcycles are different, but the light is the same. Because that light that we see shining in the motorcycle came from the sun. It came from the solar system. It came from the Big Bang. It's just one light. Where does the sun, our sun, get its energy from? Where does that light come from? It comes from the galaxy. Well, it comes from the universe. It comes from the cosmos. It comes from consciousness. Remember, we said light and consciousness, we can define them, and love, we can define them interchangeably. If we go back to that singularity. So are the objects of my limited consciousness different than Paul's? Absolutely. But is it my consciousness? No. It's just consciousness. Why? Why can't there just be consciousness? It's getting brighter and brighter and brighter in Tiru. I'm going to plan ahead, turn it down a little bit. Okay. If there's just one consciousness, why does it need me and Paul and Jung to show up? Why does it look like different consciousnesses? If we just take into consideration the universe, how many trillions of galaxies have they now determined that are out there? And we don't know that that's the end by any means, right? But trillions and gazillions of solar systems within those trillions of galaxies. It boggles the mind. Now let's go specific to our solar system that we can observe easily, at least the sun, the moon, the earth, the planets as stars. For the world to appear, we need different points of view. The different points of view are fueled by consciousness, one consciousness that appears as limited consciousness through Guy, through Jung, through Paul, through Tom, through all of us. Let me use an example. Have all of you ever seen, before the digital age, right, when we had film cameras, we had 35mm film, came in a strip, right? And we would record on that, say 30 frames a second, or 60 frames, or 24 frames, whatever it was. Let's talk about a moment being 1 second, just for this conversation. My camera right now is set at 60 frames per second. So in 1 second of this video, what it's done is it's taken captured 60 still images. And when we put it together and we run it through light, it looks like movement. Let's talk about a still photograph now. Let's say that there's a flower arrangement on a table that all of us are sitting around. And let's say that there was only one consciousness. And let's say that each point of view that you and I have is a camera. And there are now, let's say that there are 360 people of us in a circle around the table with the vase on it of flowers. Each one of us is a camera. Each one of us takes, wait, let me step back. Let's say 60. I was talking about 60 frames in a second, right? So there's 60 people sitting at a table in a circle. Each one of us is a camera. We take a picture of that flower vase. If we string all 60 together, we see every angle, right? We have a very complete view of what those flowers look like from the back, from the front, from the side, each side, 3/4 angle, up to 60 in this comparison. When we string them out and we look at them, we put them all together, we see a wonderful picture of all sides of the flowers. I see this frame first, this frame, right? I go through, I see all 60 frames. That takes time, right? And it takes space. Now, let's say that we only have one unlimited point of view. So let's take those 60 frames and let's start putting them one on top of the other, okay? Until there's only one frame that we see, one moment, 1/60th of a second, that's 60 layers deep. What would the flowers look like? In fact, could you see a flower at all? Or would it just be a blob? Probably black. It would be a very dark blob of color. Most likely it would just be black. There would be no definition. Yet the flower is there. In all of those 60 frames, there's a picture of a flower. But if we don't have 60, in this case, 60 points of view, we can't see it. We know it's a flower, but we can't see it as a flower. We have to create time and space to have, in this case, 60 different cameras or 60 different views in order to understand the beauty of that flower, to see the beauty of the flower. Each point of view is beautiful. Without time, see what happens is all those 60 frames are right there. Everything we need to know what the flower is right there. But we can't see it at all because our brain is linear. Our brain can't see 60 points of view at once. It has to break them down. That's how the brain was designed for whatever reason. That's another conversation. There is a reason. but we can't see it. What do we need? We need time? Yeah, we need time. But let's say we take those 60 frames, all sitting on top of each other, and we move it. Problem solved? Still can't see it. We move it again, still can't see it. We move it again, still can't see it again. What are we missing? We're missing the other half of the one thing. It's space-time, not space and time. Space-time is one dependent feature. Now, if we come back to center and we take one frame and so now we're moving in time and in space. Oh, I get one view now of the flower. I have a little hint. I have 1/60th of the total picture of the flower. So I'll take another one and move it over here. Now I have this one big pile, it's still black or dark brown. But I have two that are pretty clear. Now I take and I spread them back out, right? But I want to keep still a stack in the middle of it. And I look at this one. And I look at this one and I can't tell what it is. And I look at this one. When I look at this one, in time space, it takes me a moment to look at this one. One is the past, one is the future. The present is a blur. And I'm doing this really on purpose to see how we make an analogy with our lives. The past we think we got, we understand. So very clear, we think it's a clear picture, right? The future I can imagine really clearly. I can make a picture of it, but I'm lost in the present because I'm always over here. I don't see this part, but I want to go just this explanation is time and space are required to see the beauty of that flower. I can see it in the past, I can see it in the future. And as I lay them all out in a row, I see one view, that's time and space. I see another view, time and space, time and space, time and space, time and space. Here's now, right? Time and space, time and space, time and space. Everything in order for the world to appear, it needs not 60 points of view, not even 360 points of view. It takes a nearly unlimited, or I will say, it takes an infinite number of points of view. It takes an infinite number of beings, sentient beings, humans, animals, insects, protozoa, cells, to see our world, let alone the universe. Time and space are only a measurement device for reality, for now. In fact, we can't even see now. What we think we see now is already the past. By the time my mind says now, it's the past. The now is not seeable with our eyes and minds. Our limited mind, our brains. The now is only knowable with that heart center. It's too brief for us to measure. But for practical purposes in the world, I say this class starts at 8 o'clock. I say when the clock goes tick to 8, I say that's now. Practical purposes, it works fine. We need that to navigate this world. Just know that it's not the ultimate truth. It's a device we use to survive in this dualistic world as limited beings. And the world is going to affect us constantly. Just remember that at the substratum is only one consciousness. All those experiences, my body and my mind will go through. There's no denying that. But if I was serious enough about that self-investigation, what we call negation, and say, I'm not Guy, I'm not a man, I'm not a human, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. That's very easy to define. We end up with, who am I? There's nothing left. There's nothing left to measure. When everything that's measurable is gone, all there is me. If you who have been here remember the story about the fat man, the obese man, losing weight and looking in the mirror, he went from 200 kg down to 60 kg. And he told the doctor, he said, you know, doctor, I have this feeling like my body could disappear and I would still be here. That was an insight. That was being conscious. If I know that at the substratum of this body and mind that is talking and you're listening to right now is just consciousness. Just like love, when I said your child throws up on you, there might be some upset in the moment, but you laugh at it. It's your child. Your child can do anything and get away with it ultimately, right? Your child can kill somebody and you still won't stop loving your child. It's indestructible. The love, let me use that as an example. I have an 18-year-old son, hypothetical. He murders somebody. Do I stop loving him? All the parents I've talked to, all the conscious, the ones that have their act together, they say, as much as I wish I could, I can't. That love is indestructible. The world cannot damage love. We can hide it through our opinions, our beliefs, all the sunglasses, all the veils we put over us, but we can't destroy, the world cannot destroy love. It can alter how it shows up. But behind the facade, it's still love, just as it was before my son killed somebody. See, the world can't hurt love. Neither can the world hurt consciousness. But if I take myself to be this body and mind that has all the opinions about the world and my son, you know, I might disown my son. I'll hurt so much that I say, I am disowning you. You're on your own now. I'll never talk to you again. That's great suffering. But what is the suffering happening to? It's happening to my body and my mind and my belief systems, my emotions, my memories, all the beautiful pictures of my child when he was young, how wonderful he was. All of those things are damaged by the world. In this case, showing up through my son. They haven't touched love. The suffering is brought on by my thoughts, my feelings, my memories. Those are emotional sufferings. They don't touch love. And they don't touch consciousness. And the message of non-dualism is what you really are is consciousness/love. And you are okay. Love and consciousness do not suffer by what my 18-year-old son does. And if I am love and consciousness, then I don't suffer either. My body and my mind suffer a lot. It'll ruin my practical life in this dualistic world if I let it. But it's an option, see? Now that I know that the world can't touch love and consciousness. I have a choice. I can lose myself, put on my sunglasses, and think that I'm Guy, I'm the parent of an 18-year-old son who just murdered somebody, and I hate him, and I disown him. Why do I put on the sunglasses? Because I'm hurting. All my expectations of life just went out the window when my son killed somebody. That's not the way sons are supposed to be. That's not the way love is supposed to be. Something's wrong here, and I'm suffering because I'm identified with what's wrong. But if in that moment I step back and say, wait a minute, am I my emotions and my thoughts and my feelings? Or am I love? Am I consciousness? That's one, that can't be damaged, it can't be cut up, it can't disappear and go someplace else. If I believe that I am love and consciousness, what happens is my suffering of the event that my son kills somebody, it doesn't have a hold on love and consciousness. Then I can deal with my son from a place of love and consciousness. I can deal with this emotional suffering from a place of love and consciousness. And I can see not the limitations of love and consciousness, I see the limitations of my emotions and my feelings and my belief systems. And when I see that they're limitations, they're not the real me, I see them clearly, just like the film strip of 60 frames. I see each one clearly. I can analyze it now without being so affected by it. I can be sad. I can be angry. Those are okay. But I know that it's the not me that is experiencing sadness and anger. And those are temporary. Love is permanent. I'm convinced of that. Consciousness is permanent and undivisible. Same with love. They're both indivisible and permanent. And as such, I can let's say, get through anything because they're not in anything. But with that seeing, I will deal with the practical life in a place of compassion and love and kindness and justness. I'll say it's appropriate that they put my son in prison. I hope the prison is a humane prison that will really be invested in showing him a better way to live in what they call rehabilitation. I'll have hope. I'll love the prison guards with all my heart that they take care of my son and all the other inmates humanely, with compassion. I'll let life play out, and I'll play the game as Guy. If my son killed somebody and tomorrow I go to work with a smile on my face and I'm cracking jokes at the water cooler and people say, you are so cold-hearted, I can't tell them, well, I know what love and consciousness are. See, there's this thing called non-duality, and let me tell you why I'm not bothered by it. I would be an asshole. I play the game. I wear a mask. The mask is called Guy, the American photographer, or whatever it is. Right? Because it would be damaging for those who don't know the truth yet, for me to dump my beautiful truth on them. So I play the game just as if it's real. I just know that I'm an actor in the game. My son is an actor in the game. the person he killed is an actor in the game. And I have compassion for all actors because I know every person, every being, every animal, every creature that I come across is an actor that consciousness is seeing the world through. And every part is necessary. It doesn't mean I invite them all into my house. It's not that big. I choose the ones I want to associate with as the actor. But the ones I exclude, I love just as much as the ones I include. Knowing that I am love and light and consciousness, one undivided with everybody else, including the 7 people in here, it doesn't change the apparent world, but it does change how I interact with it. And if I interact with it coming from this place of unconditional love, I'm willing to bet my life that other things in the world will start showing up reflecting unconditional love. And what we call the world will look better. Bit by bit, I have a very small part to play. But if I let consciousness and unconditional love, unlimited, infinite, eternal love, come through little me, this body, it will shine and it will touch somebody within my reference. And if it's really that consciousness showing through, it will affect the world. But I won't take any credit for it because it's coming through my eyes, through my heart, through my mind. I'm the vehicle for it to show up. But it's not me. The me is the consciousness behind all of us. Make sense? Is it even so bizarre that I say I can't accept that? I don't know. For me, see, I don't have any fear about being only consciousness. In fact, it's very freeing because if this body quits tomorrow, I'm still here. If I look at this as a real possibility, where's my suffering? Not pain. Pain will still happen, but the suffering, there's no basis for it. Acts of compassion will still be there. Sorrow will still be there, but they're not attached to the real me. They come and they go for the show. But I have to believe they're real for them to be authentic in the show. I can't say, I can't be on the stage playing the King of England if I am constantly telling myself, okay, I'm on the stage playing the King of England. I'm on the stage playing the King of England. I have to lose myself in the moment of the role to make it convincing. To earn the money that they're going to pay me for playing the part, I have to become the part in that moment. Never losing sight that ultimately, am I ghee? Well, that's a layer, but ultimately I'm just consciousness. There's no risk in that. Can't lose consciousness. We play the role. There's a famous Taoist saying and Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It means when I'm asleep, when I'm ignorant, I still have to go and cut wood so I can make a fire and collect water so I can drink and I can eat my food and I can survive. And after enlightenment, when I realize what the world is, what reality is, I still cut wood and chop water because in this practical world, those are still necessary things for my body and my mind. and the people around me. But I approach it completely differently. My awareness sees it differently, so my suffering with the ups and downs is gone. What is the risk in that? Why aren't we willing to let go of a belief that says, I am consciousness, there's me and there's you, and we're not the same. And the world is full of objects that aren't me. What's the risk? You still have the world to go back to. The world will look just the same. The risk is that our ego doesn't want to let go of our belief systems. It has no control over us if we start stripping away the belief systems that have made the ego. There is no such thing as ego other than a compilation of thoughts and memories and feelings that create pictures. Pictures turn into belief systems. If we start disbelieving the belief systems, the ego is in the process of disappearing. It doesn't like that. We've trained it for all these years to pretty much be our masters. Of course, we're going to have resistance to letting that go. The only thing that should be fearful is our ego. Nothing in the non-dual teachings puts our bodies at risk. In fact, it empowers our bodies. We become the properly functioning vehicle for awareness to see the world. Right now, most of us have hijacked it and are doing a pretty bad job because of all the sunglasses we put on are seeing. Remove them and we do our job a lot better for awareness, consciousness, and it shows up in the world is that the world works better. When I remove my glasses called thoughts, memories, belief systems, judgments, opinions, I have no problem taking that risk. I'll try this on. I've tried the other on for more than 50 years. And you know what? It didn't get me to where I wanted to be. That was uninterrupted, that I really felt like I'm home. And I'm talking about happiness and peace. So, okay, I've tried this one on for, well, hardcore for 11 years. That's a relatively short time compared to what I was doing before. I'm willing to take that risk. How about you? Let's take a break right here. I need to change my battery, and anybody that needs to go to the bathroom, get a drink, can we meet in 5 minutes, 4 minutes? Okay, anybody have a problem with that?
No, all good.
Okay, I'll see you in 4 minutes. Thanks, guys. Okay, everybody back?
Yep.
Paul, would you do me a favor?
Sure.
Just remember, if I forget this, I want to talk on 2 short things and then open it up for questions. But just if you don't hear me within the next 10 minutes, I'll stop, say, what about the garden at the ashram? What about the garden at the ashram? All right.
If I don't hear you in 10 minutes, sorry,
Yeah,
can you explain again?
Yeah, if I open it up for questions,
Mm-hmm.
right, and you don't hear me talk about flowers in a garden,
Mm-hmm.
just flowers in a garden, then remind me and say, hey, you didn't talk about flowers in a garden.
Sure.
Okay. Oren and Yum are still not back with us. I want to make 2, hopefully fairly short comments, and then we'll open it up. Paul, is your daughter okay?
Yeah, she's okay. She's lying there. She's a bit lethargic, you know, but she's okay. Watching TV, so I'm kind of in and out, you know, and that's I'm kind of staying off camera today. Just,
okay. All right. Sorry about that.
The whole time I'm listening, but I'm not.
Well, Paul, remember.
Yeah,
no problem. Remember that if you miss enough and you want to know, I'm recording this and I put it up on my YouTube channel, but it's just private. So if you're interested, just tell me, I'll send you the link for it.
Sure.
At least that will be uninterrupted. I edit it.
Much to be honest, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad to know that they're there anyway. Because
yeah, I edit them so that if there's something that we miss that you can't hear, you can always go back.
Sure.
Okay. Oren, are you there? Ah, cool. Okay, Oren is back. Just Yum is missing. I want to cover 2 things as quickly as I can, just to include them here because they're very much related. And then I'll open it up for questions or conversation about it. The first one was when I first met the Zen master in the jungles of Vietnam. I was visiting with him one weekend, and on his table that we were sitting at was a yellow, I don't remember what the flower was. It could have been a sunflower. And being an American raised on movies and loving movies, and having watched all the Matrix movies and any movies that are about this kind of stuff, where we get conditioned with the glamorous idea of what a waking up is, what enlightenment is, whatever words we use to describe it. You know, we have all these Hollywood pictures of what it must be like, that we magically see things that we never saw before. And I asked him, we were sitting at the table, and I said, when you look at this yellow flower, what do you see? And he answered me, he said, I see the flower. I see a yellow flower. And then I see the distance between the flower and me. I wasn't clear. I knew he was pointing to something, but I wasn't clear what he really meant when he said, I see the distance between the flower and me. Until much later. But I asked him, I said, so you don't see like green numbers on the screen, you know? You don't see the principles behind all of existence appearing as some magical object. And he said, I see the flower just like you do. But without using his eyes, he saw what he said was the distance between the flower and himself. What he was really pointing to was seeing the lack of distance between the flower and him. What he was trying to introduce me to was the idea that ultimately the substratum of the world is consciousness. That everything is for a big word, emanation, for a simple word, appearance of consciousness. And that's what we call the world, the objective world. So he said, my eyes are no different than yours. I see a flower. Now, we might think it's bright yellow, dull yellow, orangey yellow, whatever it is. But the point is I see the flower just like basically you're seeing a flower. But I also see that the flower is just consciousness, and I am just consciousness. I got it. Well, I had some foundation in it before. I mean, it was intellectually, I could grasp that. Okay, it makes sense. But it's really difficult to walk around in life going, the toaster is consciousness, the dishwasher is consciousness, my car is consciousness, the cat is consciousness, you are consciousness, I am consciousness. Because we get wrapped up, we still have these identifications. My son, me, right? The flower. And by the way, I want to say, the identifications we make using the instance of me and my 18-year-old son who just murdered somebody, it's okay to have the identification that that being is my son. I'm not saying that all identification is wrong. I'm saying if you make those identifications to be all there is, and that everything revolves around the needs of that identification, then we're going to suffer big time. It would be silly to not have an identification of my car if I want to go to the store. The identification is okay, but it's that I don't wrap up my entire existence in that. Identification is not my body and my mind. It's not my emotions. It's not my feelings. So last week, I was at an ashram here in town. Actually, I was just going to meditate and then eat some food with the people there. And I didn't go in to eat with them, and I just walked around. They have a beautiful garden. And I don't even remember how it appeared to me, but I spent quite a bit of time walking in the garden. And understanding what I've been talking about for the last hour or something, there were some really beautiful violet flowers, very small flowers, and I was looking at them. And I was only seeing flowers. I don't want to say I was seeing anything different than just flowers. But the dissolution, the disappearance of the distance between the flower and me, I replace that distance with consciousness, but not as a mental process. How can I put it into words? Because flowers are something that's very neutral and pleasant. I looked at the purple flower, and it was just clear that what I was looking at was the substratum of the flower. My eyes were seeing the flower, but my heart was seeing the substratum of the flower. And it was a really comforting, relaxing, peaceful experience of I'm seeing flower, I'm experiencing consciousness. All there is to experience is consciousness, but I need an object to see what consciousness looks like. I know, just as with myself, I know I am here, but I can't tell you what that looks like. It's beyond any kind of measurement from our sense organs and any machines we've ever developed. But I know I'm here. But there's an appearance of a body and a mind called gi that makes it visible. Consciousness is appearing as gi. To just like when we take, okay, consciousness without any sentient beings would be like those 60 frames of film that are all stacked on top of one another. You know it's there, but you don't know what it looks like. It doesn't mean you don't know what film is. It means you don't know what the image on the film looks like. Consciousness is the same way. Is I know I am consciousness. I know there is only consciousness, but it's not anything to do with any of my senses and my sense organs. There's the only thing I can say is there's an awareness. And thank God there's a pretty purple flower there, because I get to see what consciousness, and remember what we're using, when I say consciousness, you can interchange it with love, beauty, truth, because we're all moved. When we really experience love, when we really experience, I don't mean sensual oriented beauty, but something that moves your heart. When you hear something that's so beautiful, it moves you. We know what that feeling is. I'm using the word feeling, but we all can relate to, oh my God, I experience beauty for what beauty really is. I experience consciousness for what consciousness really is. Without an object, I know it, but it takes an object for me to see beauty. You know, there was a famous judge in America a long time ago when there was a big lawsuit about somebody had made a pornographic movie. And at one point, the judge said, I can't tell you what pornography is, but I sure can show you when I see it. Consciousness it's so vague, there's not language to adequately know it. But when I see something that is pure beauty, it's consciousness that's showing up. It's not a flower that's showing up. It's consciousness showing up, appearing as a beautiful purple flower. So when I walked around the garden and I looked at the purple flower, and it was like, I'm seeing consciousness. And I looked at the palm tree next to it, and I'm seeing consciousness. And there was a beautiful fountain there, and I looked at it, and I'm seeing consciousness. It's consciousness that's appearing as a fountain. It's consciousness that's appearing as a palm tree. It's consciousness that's appearing as a dead leaf on the ground. They all are different appearances, but they're only consciousness at their foundation. That which really is only that which cannot be broken down anymore. It's not temporary. The flower will be dead in a couple of days. Does that mean, just like love, when my son kills somebody, is love dead? Or is the appearance of, the expectations of what it would be changed? The flower went away, but consciousness was still there. The palm tree can go away, but the substratum, the basis of it all, hasn't changed a bit. And when I go away, it won't change either. It's beyond all the objects. The objects owe their existence to consciousness. They are an appearance of consciousness. In themselves, they are not the reality. They are an object of appearance of consciousness. And for the rest of that afternoon, wherever I was going, it was like, it wasn't in my head anymore. Everything I saw, including the people, I got it. Okay. And I didn't have to explain it. I just was very peaceful. And it never changed. In fact, I would say it made the purple flower, the palm tree, the dead leaf on the ground in the fountain more beautiful, because I had taken away the last pair of sunglasses. I'd removed the last veil obscuring the reality of them. So even in that instance, knowing the reality of only consciousness and only one consciousness didn't damage the world at all. If anything, it made it better. The appearance of the world. I still would act the same way with the flower. Well, I mean, I would, if I was going to water the garden for the flowers, if I was the gardener, I would still water it. I would still clean up the garden. But there's a peace with me now in the garden that I never had before. There's a love with me in the garden that I never knew before. Does that make sense? I'm trying to really make simple pictures to get the benevolence of only one consciousness. It's the foundation, not for just the objects that you see. It's the foundation for your happiness. And that's what this whole thing is about, is how do you and I become the happiness that by nature we are, that never goes away, is never damaged. It's only covered up in the same way that clouds cover up the sun in the sky. I don't find happiness. I unveil the happiness that is me. I want to get rid of the sunglasses and all the veils and the walls that I've built to not see me. I think it's really simple. It's just our mind makes it so complicated, because what it entails is rendering the ego without a need other than just the physical survival. You don't cross the street when there's a truck coming. The ego says, don't go there. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about how it rules our emotional and our mental lives and our interactions with our loved ones and with the world as a whole. If we got that, the world would look so different. Without lifting a finger, the world would take care of itself. Okay, I'm going to stop there. and just open it up for questions. And if there's something I said that doesn't make sense or that's not clear, I don't want to debate it, but I want to see if something needs clarification. I'm going to add something here. I talked a lot today about scientists and philosophers / spiritualists. Everybody has their domain in this world where they have wisdom that should be honored. If I break my arm, I'm going to go to a scientist called a doctor and get the arm fixed. I'm going to go to a psychologist to deal with my suffering and my projection about I can't get beyond the fear that I now have because I broke my arm in a particular way. And the psychologist will help me deal with that this is just something passing. Don't worry, you'll be fine, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. And I'm going to go to a philosopher or a spiritualist or someone who has that inclination. There are plenty of scientists who have that inclination. And they're the ones that are going to say, it didn't even happen to you. You need to know who you are. 3 different worlds in this world. Each one has its experts. I wouldn't go to the psychologist to heal the broken bone. I wouldn't go to a scientist to find out who I am. And I wouldn't go to a spiritualist to tell me, how does the atom work? How does it behave? I don't discredit any of them. I just say they each have their place. The beauty would be when one day, right, the scientist is also a philosopher and is also a psychologist, but we're not there yet. If nobody has any questions, we can end it here. We don't have to continue on. We can end here and then pick up next Sunday. Or you can always send me comments during the week privately and I'll address them. And if they're a common thing, maybe I'll write something and post it on our page. But if you have no questions, then we can just wrap it up and do our things in the object world. Just remembering that the real I is not touched by what happens to those objects. What's your vote, guys? You want to end it here? Okay. Oren, you okay with that? Okay. All right. Thank you. I talked.
No, so I will send it to you later.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. I appreciate you. I talked a lot. I am always, one of my awarenesses is I talk too much. But when it comes from my heart, it's something that just keeps flowing. So I'll see you guys next Sunday. Oren, I hope you enjoyed this and you'll be back. It was a treat to have you here. And we'll talk soon, guys. Thank you for allowing me to talk and talk and talk. Be well. Paul, I hope your daughter's okay.
Yeah.
See you.